Republicans continue to peddle dishonest solutions that deflect from the real issue, guns, and the real solution of gun reform. Their latest push, door control.
One of the things that everyone agreed is don't have all of these unlocked back doors. Have one door into and out of the school.
If this school was on lockdown, could the doors have been locked where you couldn't have gotten in? There are billions of dollars sitting out there after COVID for schools that we should redirect that money to allow the schools to use that to have one central point of interest to protect these kids.
It's the latest form of Republican gaslighting, that protecting kids from a mass shooter armed like they're fighting a war could somehow be about, what, teachers or a good guy with a gun or even a good school with a door. It's not. And here we are, debating these absurd theories that have been debunked since Columbine. Joining me now, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, a Democrat leading bipartisan negotiations over gun reforms. And as our previous guest, thank you for being here, Senator, as our previous guest who came from the gun industry at one point noted, literally our previous segment about guns was interrupted by yet another mass shooting, this time at a hospital in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You've been keeping count of the numbers that are going on. We can't even get through a 10-minute segment on on guns and gun violence without another shooting. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Since Uvalde, we've had somewhere around 20 mass shootings, including now it appears at a hospital. We've had more mass shootings this year than days in the year. They are happening at a pace that we have never, ever seen before in this nation's history. And it is not coincidental to a dramatic increase over the course of the last few years in the pace of gun sales, which ultimately means a lot of guns end up in the hands of people who shouldn't have them, including people who have criminal records, including people who have serious red flags. And so, this is, just something that I worry the country is becoming used to. I worry the country is becoming numb to. And I hope that we can get some agreement between Republicans and Democrats, because if we don't, this pace will continue to increase. And every single day, you will see 1 or 2 or 3 mass shootings in this country, something we could have never dreamed about just 10 years ago.
Well, or after Columbine. I mean, the reason, and I definitely, we are not numb to it. I definitely am not. I'm shaken by each and every one, and I know you're not, just from your passion. But you know why worry is numb to it? Some of your colleagues. Let me play Mitch McConnell. This is what Mitch McConnell says every single time there is one of these massacres. Here he is.
We will lift the victims and their families and the entire community in prayer. My colleagues from Florida will carry home the prayers of the whole Senate for victims and their families, for the community of Parkland. Psalm 34, that the Lord is near to the brokenhearted.
And I shudder to say it, Joe Manchin this time came out after and said, I've never been in this former frame of mind. I can't get my grandchildren out of my mind. He said, this time around, it feels very different. That's literally almost verbatim what he said in 2018 after Parkland. So the people who don't want to do gun reform have a script, Senator. And I forgive me if I am not hopeful that after these shootings happen and they just say the same script and then add to it, harden the doors and make only one way in and one way out, which is actually unsafe. I don't have a lot of hope. Why should I have hope that you guys are going to be able to get something done?
Well, I mean, first of all, Joe Manchin is, frankly, in our caucus, one of the leaders on the issue of changing our gun laws. He was, of course, the author of the background checks bill compromise in 2013 that failed to even at that time win all of the Democratic senators' support. But why is this time different? Well, I do think there is a different kind of reaction to the cataclysm of Uvalde. I think there are Republicans who are emotionally moved by what occurred. And I think that we we've had 10 years since Sandy Hook to build up an anti-gun violence movement in this country that's strong, that now has, frankly, more members and more money and more resources than the gun lobby has. And so we're in a fair fight when it comes to elections. That matters when we're trying to get Republicans to the table. Maybe we won't succeed, but I've never seen more Republicans at the table willing to talk about changes in our gun laws than I do today. I was in an hour-long conversation today, hour-long conversation yesterday with Republicans, side conversations every morning and every evening. There's something different happening right now, and I hope that ends up in a piece of legislation before the Senate.
And we need a piece of legislation, obviously, that gets 60 votes because of Manchin and Sinema. They won't allow any reforms to the filibuster, so you need 60 votes. Tell me, in your mind, as you're talking to these Republicans, who you say, and I believe, listen, they have children and grandchildren, too. They're human beings. You can't not be moved by these deaths of little kids and their teachers. What do you think is realistic to get through the Senate and get 60 votes, or that would avoid a filibuster?
Yeah, we need to get 60 votes. We probably, frankly, need to get more than 60 votes in order to get this passed and to get Republicans comfortable with the product. I don't think we have to get it all done at once. I mean, I think what we're trying to do here is prove to Republicans that if they vote for measures that tighten up the nation's gun laws, the political sky does not fall. In fact, they are going to get a lot more supporters than they will people attacking them back home. We have to prove that to Republicans. And so what are we talking about in this legislation? We're talking about red flag laws. We're talking about strengthening our background check system. We're talking about incentives for the safe storage of firearms. We are talking about mental health money as well, but we're talking about a comprehensive package that will allow Republicans to take that step forward and learn that, in fact, there's political gain to be had in attaching yourself to the 90% of your constituents who want us to do something about gun violence.
The challenge, though, is that Mitch McConnell has already come out and thrown 2 false flags at gun reform and said what he thinks is real gun reform is to do something about mental health. This is somebody who opposes Obamacare and wants it repealed. And to do something, I don't know if he mention hardening schools. The same thing, doors and mental health. They're not going to legislate on anything that has to do with actual firearms. That's a problem.
Well, let's see, because I would argue that tightening the nation's background check laws and passing red flag laws fits the test that Mitch McConnell put before us, because when you tighten our nation's background check law system, you are making sure that both criminals and people with significant histories of mental illness don't get guns. Red flag laws are used to stop people whose brains are breaking in some way, shape, or form from holding on to the weapons that they are potentially going to use to kill themselves or to others. So, yeah, I've never believed that this is a mental health problem. We don't have any more mental illness than any other country in the world, but we have all the gun violence, so there's something else that makes us different. But I think that we may be able to find something that gets Senator McConnell's support.
Do you think that there should be the age to buy beer is 21? Should there be a minimum age of 21 to buy a rifle? Because AR-15s are a rifle. They're a long gun. They're classified like a rifle. You used to be able to buy one in Walmart until they themselves decided to stop selling them that way. But they're a rifle, so you can buy them easier than you can get a Glock. Do you think that should change?
I do think that should change, and I think there's a couple things at play here. One, you do have to look at the profile of these mass shooters, right? They are frighteningly similar from shooting to shooting. They tend to be in that 18 to 21 range, and by a strange sort of feature of American gun law, if you're 18 years old, you can't buy a handgun. Because for a long time we thought that the handgun was the most dangerous weapon you could own. But you can buy an AR-15. Well, we now know that AR-15s are, in fact, more dangerous, given the pace of mass shootings, than handguns may be. And so it's just an effort to update the law. You can't buy a handgun today if you're 18, but you can buy a gun that can kill a lot of people much faster than a handgun. Again, I don't know whether there's 60 votes in the Senate to get that done, but I do know there are a lot of Republicans talking about the fact that we need to do something about this profile of shooter, that 18 to 21-year-old male that tends to do this over and over and over again.
Well, if anyone can do it, the one person I believe actually could get it done is you. So, Senator Chris Murphy, really appreciate your time this evening. We wish you Godspeed and hope that you're successful in getting something done here. It's critical for all our families. Thank you.